The late afternoon sun filtered through the high windows of Bruce Lee's training studio in Hong Kong, casting long shadows across the polished wooden floor. The familiar scent of sweat, determination, and well-worn leather filled the air as Bruce finished his daily session with his regular students. One by one, they bowed respectfully and filed out. Bruce was wiping down the heavy bag when he heard tentative footsteps behind him. He turned to see a young man standing in the doorway, probably in his early 20s, with gentle features and eyes that held unmistakable innocence. The visitor wore simple clothes that were slightly too big for his thin frame. "Excuse me," the young man said, his words slightly slurred but clear enough. "Are you Master Lee?" Bruce set down his towel and studied the newcomer. There was something different about him. The way he held himself, the careful pronunciation of each word, the expression of pure earnestness. Bruce had seen enough of the world to recognize the signs of intellectual disability, but he also saw something else, an unshakable determination that burned behind those gentle eyes. "I am," Bruce replied carefully. "What can I do for you?" The young man's face lit up with a smile so genuine it was almost blinding. "My name is Tommy Chen. I want to learn Kung Fu." He paused, gathering his thoughts with visible effort. "People say I can't learn things good, but I think I can learn Kung Fu. I think you can teach me." Bruce felt a familiar tightness in his chest. Over the years, he'd turned away hundreds of potential students for various reasons. Lack of discipline, wrong motivations, insufficient dedication. But this was different. This was delicate territory that required more than martial arts expertise. It required compassion and wisdom he wasn't sure he possessed. "Tommy," Bruce said gently, "learning martial arts requires a lot of focus and coordination. It can be very challenging, even for people who—" He stopped himself, realizing how his words might sound. "Even for people like me?" Tommy finished, his smile never wavering. "I know I'm different. My mama told me I'm special. She says special people have to work harder, but that makes them stronger inside." He stepped forward with confident innocence. "I brought money to pay for lessons." Tommy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, worn from handling. He counted out crumpled bills and loose change. Everything he had saved. Bruce looked at the money on the table, then back at Tommy's hopeful face. Every rational part of his mind told him this was a mistake. Teaching martial arts to someone with intellectual disabilities would require infinite patience, modified techniques, and probably very limited results. But something in Tommy's eyes, that unwavering belief that he could learn, that determination born from a lifetime of having to work harder for everything, made Bruce's decision for him. "All right, Tommy, we'll try some lessons. But I need you to understand that this will be hard work. Much harder than anything you've done before." Tommy's entire face transformed with joy. "I'm not afraid of hard work, Master Lee. I do hard work every day." "I believe you do," Bruce said quietly. "Let's start with some basic movements." Bruce led Tommy to the center of the studio, where thousands of students had learned martial arts fundamentals. He started with the most basic Wing Chun stance, feet parallel, knees slightly bent, back straight. "Stand like this," Bruce demonstrated, settling into the position with effortless grace. Tommy watched intently, his face scrunched in concentration, as he tried to mirror Bruce's stance. His feet were too wide, his back hunched forward, his arms hanging awkwardly. But he held the position with determined focus, even as his legs began to shake. "Good," Bruce said, though privately he noted at least 6 major adjustments needed. "Now let's work on your foot position." For the next hour, Bruce patiently adjusted Tommy's stance, explaining each correction simply and demonstrating repeatedly. Tommy's motor coordination was challenged, and what took most students minutes to grasp took him much longer. But what struck Bruce was Tommy's complete lack of frustration. When Bruce corrected his foot position for the 10th time, Tommy simply smiled and said, "Thank you, Master Lee. I'm learning." By the end of the session, Tommy had achieved something resembling a proper basic stance. Bruce had worked with elite athletes who showed less genuine appreciation for fundamental techniques. "That's enough for today," Bruce said as Tommy's legs finally began to give out. Tommy bowed clumsily, but with perfect sincerity. "Thank you, Master Lee. When can I come back?" "Same time next week," Bruce found himself saying. After Tommy left, Bruce stood alone in his studio, staring at the spot where his new student had struggled so earnestly with basic techniques. He had taught movie stars, fellow martial artists, and wealthy businessmen, but none had approached their training with the pure, uncomplicated dedication he had just witnessed. The following week, Tommy returned exactly on time, wearing the same clothes but with a carefully drawn diagram in his pocket. His attempt to remember the stance Bruce had taught him. His positioning was still all wrong, but Bruce could see that he had been practicing. "I tried to practice at home," Tommy announced proudly. "My mama said I looked like a kung fu master." Bruce smiled despite himself. "Show me what you remember." Tommy settled into his approximation of the stance, and while it was still far from correct, Bruce could see subtle improvements. The dedication required to practice alone, without guidance, spoke to a level of commitment that Bruce rarely encountered. Week after week, Tommy returned. Progress was painfully slow by conventional standards. What took other students? One session to master took Tommy months. But Bruce began to notice something remarkable. Tommy never got discouraged, never complained, never showed up unprepared. "Again," Bruce would say after Tommy's 20th attempt at a simple block. "Okay, Master Lee," Tommy would reply with undiminished enthusiasm. Bruce found himself looking forward to Tommy's sessions. There was something pure about teaching someone who approached each lesson with the wonder of a child and the dedication of a monk. Tommy's questions were basic but thoughtful, his effort was absolute, and his gratitude was overwhelming. 3 months into their training, Bruce decided to introduce a simple punching technique. He demonstrated the movement slowly, explaining the rotation of the fist, the engagement of the shoulder. Tommy watched with laser focus, his eyes tracking every detail. When he tried to replicate it, his punch was slow, uncoordinated, and lacked proper form. But he held his fist in position afterward, studying his own hand as if it contained secrets. "Like this?" Tommy asked, throwing another awkward punch. "Let me adjust your form," Bruce said, moving behind Tommy to guide his arm. As Bruce positioned Tommy's shoulder and adjusted his fist rotation, he felt the young man's entire body trembling. Not from fear, but from the sheer effort of trying to control muscles that didn't want to cooperate. Tommy was fighting a battle with his own nervous system every time he attempted a technique, but he never gave up. "Master Lee, do you think I'll ever be good at Kung Fu?" The question caught Bruce off guard. He looked at Tommy's earnest face, at the sweat from their basic exercises, at the unwavering hope in his eyes. By conventional standards, Tommy would never be good at martial arts. He would never achieve fluid grace or lightning-fast reflexes. But as Bruce considered the question, he realized that Tommy had already achieved something far more valuable than technical proficiency. He had developed unshakable discipline, an ability to persist through endless difficulties, and a humility that allowed him to find joy in the smallest improvements. "Tommy," Bruce said carefully, "being good at Kung Fu isn't just about how fast you can punch or how perfect your stance looks. It's about discipline, perseverance, and never giving up. By that measure, you're already better than most students I've ever taught." Tommy's face lit up as if Bruce had just handed him the greatest treasure in the world. "Really? Really?" 6 months into their training, something unexpected happened. Bruce was demonstrating a defensive technique when Tommy suddenly asked, "Master Lee, why do you look sad sometimes?" The question hit Bruce like a physical blow. "What do you mean?" "When you think no one is looking," Tommy said with guileless honesty. "You get this sad look on your face, like you're carrying something heavy." Bruce stared at his student, struck by the realization that Tommy had perceived something that Bruce himself barely acknowledged. The pressure of fame, the constant demands for perfection, the weight of everyone's expectations. "Everyone carries heavy things sometimes, Tommy. It's part of growing up." "Maybe Kung Fu can help with heavy feelings, too," Tommy suggested. "When I practice my stance at home, I feel strong inside. Not just in my body, but in my heart." The observation was so simple, so pure, that it took Bruce a moment to absorb its significance. Tommy had intuitively understood something that Bruce had spent years trying to articulate, that martial arts was as much about inner strength as physical technique. "You're right," Bruce said quietly. "Kung Fu does help with heavy feelings." As their sessions continued, Bruce found himself learning as much from Tommy as he was teaching. Tommy's approach to difficulties was unlike anything Bruce had encountered. When he couldn't master a technique, he didn't get angry or frustrated. He simply adjusted his expectations and found joy in incremental progress. "I got my punch a little bit better today," Tommy would announce with genuine pride after a session where his improvement was barely perceptible. Bruce began to understand that Tommy possessed something rare, the ability to find satisfaction in the process rather than obsessing over the outcome. While Bruce and his other students often focused on achieving the next level, Tommy was content to simply show up and do his best. One evening, after a challenging session where Tommy had struggled with a new combination, Bruce asked, "Tommy, do you ever get frustrated when the techniques are difficult?" Tommy considered the question seriously. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but my mama always tells me that hard things make you stronger. She says the muscles in my brain work just like the muscles in my body. The more I use them, the stronger they get." The wisdom in Tommy's mother's words struck Bruce profoundly. Here was a family that had turned intellectual disability into a philosophy of strength through persistence. "Your mother sounds very wise." "She is," Tommy agreed proudly. "She says everyone has different kinds of strong. Some people are strong with their bodies, some with their minds, and some with their hearts. She says I'm strong with my heart." Bruce found himself thinking about Tommy's words long after the session ended. In a world that often measured worth by cognitive ability or physical prowess, Tommy and his mother had created their own definition of strength, one based on character, persistence, and love. A year into their training, Bruce decided to test Tommy's progress by having him demonstrate his techniques for other students. Tommy approached the demonstration with earnest focus. His techniques were still rough, his movements slow and sometimes uncoordinated. But there was something in his presentation, a dignity, a complete lack of self-consciousness, that commanded respect. When Tommy finished, one student asked, "How long have you been training?" "1 year," Tommy replied proudly. The student looked confused, comparing Tommy's skill level to his own first year. But before he could say anything, another student spoke up. "You never miss a class, do you?" "Never," Tommy confirmed. "Master Lee teaches me, and I learn. Even when it's hard, I come." Bruce overheard his students talking afterward with genuine respect for Tommy's dedication. One mentioned that Tommy's perfect attendance put him to shame. Another said he wished he had Tommy's positive attitude. Bruce realized that Tommy had become an unexpected teacher for the entire class, demonstrating virtues that technical skill alone could never convey. One day, about 18 months into their training, Tommy arrived with tears in his eyes. Bruce immediately set aside his planned lesson. "What's wrong, Tommy?" "Some boys